Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the JT podcast. And today I have with me my lifelong friend, known this person probably longer than anyone except my parents and siblings. His name is JD Moseley, and we actually, fun fact, met I think like the day after he got back home from the hospital because our older sisters were friends and were having a play date. So, JD, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. To correct JT, I think we actually met in the womb. Our moms were
Okay.
hanging out, but that is accurate. One of my longest run friends.
Yeah, good point. Good point. We were probably conscious even inside the wombs at that point, sending
I think so.
telepathic signals of friendship.
I
Cool.
like
Well,
to
thank
think
you
so.
for coming on to the show. So, just maybe give us a little bit of a background of yourself, where you're from, and maybe the work that you're currently doing.
Sure, yeah. So as JT mentioned, I'm JD and currently living in Larchmont, New York, which is a beautiful town where my wife grew up. We met in New York City. We moved here in 2021, and currently I am working for Cisco Food Service. I've been working in the food service industry for about 8 or 9 years now. It was a big career change I made in about 2017. So I'm currently working from home.
Cool. What were you doing before you got into the food service industry, and maybe what prompted the transition?
That's a great question. So I was running the rat race in Manhattan, aspirations to work in finance with absolutely no specific direction or nepotism to influence that.
Tough,
So
tough, tough when that happens.
that was tough. So a lot of cold calling, a lot of lonely days and nights, and I made it work. I tried to steer into a path of environmental finance. I basically played out every finance avenue that I could to no avail. And then one day I just said, I really don't want to be on the sales side of anything. I really am unhappy. So I quit my job and went through a process of figuring out what to do. And my process was doing the opposite of what I didn't want to do. So what's the opposite of selling? Buying. So I started taking coffee meetings around the city and found procurement opportunities in the food space because that was the only thing I enjoyed buying. I know we're all familiar with circulars from the grocery store. That's kind of what prompted the interest in that, and landed an interview at Restaurant Depot in 2017 and ended up buying commodity frozen seafood. So it was a abrupt change, but a very fun one.
Excellent. Now, would you consider yourself like a foodie? Do you like cooking? Was food maybe like a primary interest before you kind of had the inspiration to start applying for jobs on that side?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I'm 100% a foodie, a food nerd, if you will. I really like to curate independent, creators of single origin items like vinegars and stuff like that. So, but I think that's based in, my mom prioritized dinner as a family growing up. I mean, I don't remember a school night where we weren't sitting together at 7:30 eating dinner as a family. And so that really kind of fueled the interest in food. And I was able to sustain that by getting this job. And wouldn't you know it, everyone that works at these food companies are also foodies as well.
Yeah, it makes sense to
Yeah.
combine the passion with the paycheck. That's always the ideal scenario.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I like how you kind of mentioned the family dinner as being like a staple in your own family and kind of tying things together, and the food obviously being front and center to that. Is that something that you've maintained with your current family? I know that with different work schedules, it's kind of hard to do that. How have you found that maybe that goal in your day to day
Y-
life?
Yeah, that is it's definitely a priority for me. How am I doing with it is variable. I work from home as I mentioned earlier, so I am able to cook and prepare all of our meals, which is a lovely deal that I have with my wife. I do all the cooking, she does the cleaning, so it's a nice trade-off. So I'm able to put together the meals. We are a little constrained by space. So sitting at a dining room table is not currently an option as we do not have one.
There you go.
But we consistently eat together every night. Maybe not necessarily at the same time, but with a new daughter, it is something that I'm looking forward to continuing because I just think it was something that really brought us together and also really gave me an appreciation for the meals that we were eating.
Mm, yeah, yeah, it makes sense. And I can relate. More just recently, last month, we finally got ourselves a kitchen table we could eat at. We were living in a very small apartment,
Yeah,
and we're on the couch with the coffee table, every
you
day.
know
So,
it.
yeah, looking forward to you making that that leap and getting a kitchen table one day. I'm rooting for
Yeah,
you,
I
buddy.
know. I'm excited. I'm
I'm
excited.
excited for you. Cool. Yeah. So maybe with your work in the food industry, you have like learned any different like maybe types of food that
Mm.
more resonate with you as you've kind of seen from that side, or maybe what are some things that you've learned that you maybe weren't expecting or were expecting as you were getting into that, and maybe how it's impacted your decisions with what you eat.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great question. Quite frankly, the first job that I had buying frozen seafood was really the most eye-opening in terms of like knowledge of supply chain, the origins of your food, and kind of the beautiful thing about that job was really demystifying the frozen seafood world because to any normal consumer, like frozen seafood's kind of like a non-starter. Um, because of course it is. It doesn't really jump at you. It's not like you're like, yes, let's go get some like frozen tilapia fillets from ShopRite.
That doesn't
So,
jazz you up, get you excited.
it really doesn't. But if you think about how seafood is procured and coming out of the waters of the ocean, um, it really has to be frozen to move, to preserve its protein content, maintain its moisture levels, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's obviously a variance in quality depending on where you purchase from, but there's these boats out there that are catching salmon in the Norwegian seas that are, flash freezing on the boat and then it's never changing its temperature and it's going directly to the consumer. So I really learned a lot about supply chain origin and how food travels. And I really got an appreciation for seafood. And now I eat a lot more seafood as a result. I also find myself a steward of seafood to those who are curious about, farm raised versus wild caught, and this product for another one. And so that was a really fun journey. Now being more on the food service side, because that was very much more of a retail purchasing role. Now I'm looking at what customers are purchasing. So customers being our restaurants. And I want to say one of the coolest trends that I've seen is there is a real request for higher quality ingredients. I think the needs of the consumer are really permeating into the minds of the owners. And that was not a priority back in the day. It was like, how do we get the cheapest oil, the cheapest chicken tenders? How do we move plates? And now people are really health conscious and looking at what they're eating. And also, there's a fascination with ingredients that I think we just haven't seen before. Like, can you source this? Is now a question that we get from our customers way more than 5 years ago, even. It used to just be like, what's the price? And now it's like, can you get this ashwagandha root? And you're like, what? So it's really pivoted away from being super price orientated to what do we have that's different, and what's healthy for our customers.
Interesting. Now, do you think that's because I'm thinking of myself when I go to a restaurant and I order, say, the salmon, I have no
Mm-hmm.
idea where it's from. And the restaurant doesn't necessarily say on the menu. And when you go to the store, maybe it'll say on the label either wild caught or farm raised.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, do you think that's being driven from the people sitting in the seats of the tables, or is it more like the chef having higher quality standards for his own kitchen? Like, do you have an insight into where that's coming from?
Yeah, I think it's really, well, it's a bit of a combo, but I'm going to say it's primarily driven from the chef. And a good chef is going to highlight that statistic of the fish. Like, if you go to a good restaurant, someone's going to say, hey, this is Faroe Island salmon because that should that should carry a premium on cost, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And the quality is far better. Um, as opposed to like a Chilean salmon, in which case the country of origin may simply just be omitted. To your point, they might just say, this is our roasted salmon. So what is interesting and might be a fun exercise for anyone who goes out is next time you look at fish on the menu, specifically salmon, because that's such a good and a widely used fish, see if they highlight where it's from. And if they are, they're either trying to inform their consumer, which is really admirable, or they're really trying to kind of flex on, hey, we got this really good salmon. I think you should understand why we're charging X. Or, they
Right.
just want to say, hey, we do take quality as a premium here at this restaurant.
Yeah, yeah, because it makes sense. I mean, especially for those that are going out and spending the money at a restaurant, you want your dollar to go towards some quality food, I would imagine. So
For
having it
sure.
advertised on the menu, I think, would be a selling point to customers. If you're going into a grocery store, maybe things to look out for as far as labels, things to maybe steer clear of as far as health or toxin levels or things like that. Is there anything that you worry about when looking at things, or you try to avoid or try to go for?
Yeah, that's a bit trickier because again, you're not going to be exposed to some of that information from the consumer side. That's really coming from the purchasing side. So that's where you start to get loyalty to your retailer, right? So like you want to have some faith. I always go by the assume positive intent from your retailer that they are making the right purchasing decisions. Because there is, like, let's just go with tilapia fillets because it's kind of the bullied fish, it's the bottom tier. There is good tilapia fish out there that's single origin, single frozen, and probably eats really well and is an inexpensive white fillet fish. But there is a tremendous amount of product out there that is twice frozen, meaning that it's flash frozen on a boat, pulled in, defrosted, manipulated again, possibly to cut it into a certain ounce size, and then refrozen. And that's really bad for a multitude of reasons, but mostly in terms of quality of the fish and how it eats.
Hmm.
And then there's, moisture injections and things like this. So from a consumer standpoint, it's really difficult to spot those. I would say have conversations with the people that work at the seafood stand. These people are very passionate. You want to talk about foodies in the industry? Well, there's no one who's more into what they're doing than the guy that's putting on a smock, handling fish all day. And now that doesn't mean you can't buy frozen, but maybe start with a conversation there to educate yourself and just learn a little bit about it. They're so willing to teach the consumer about their product. And I think people are really nervous to have those conversations, or they just think, oh, like, I don't want to bother this person. Just,
Hmm.
I don't know, go up and ask them and just say, hey, what do you think is good? I'd like some fish for tonight, but I also would really like to have some in my freezer. Like, what do you recommend?
Interesting.
And see where that takes you. I think you might be surprised with, what you learn in those conversations.
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting tip. I guess I never really myself thought to converse with the folks at the grocery store. It's like these things are out there. They're take it or leave it. But yeah, it makes sense. The person that is handling it day to day, they probably are
Yeah,
in that job for a reason, interested in it, love what they do, or at least are knowledgeable, even if they don't necessarily love it day to day.
totally.
So can get some information by just interacting at the local spot, your local guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Cool. As far as where you said single source of origin, like where are a lot of farms or wild caught fish typically coming from?
Sure. So really kind of depends on the species of fish. Tilapia and swai, which are the heavy hitters. People will say they've never eaten tilapia. Newsflash, you most likely have if you ever had like fish and chips, like on a boardwalk at some sort of beach town. But that's all really coming from China. The salmon's coming from Chile and from Norway. You've got red snapper coming from the Gulf. That's more of a wild caught fish. The snapper you see on the menu, though, that's really coming from Brazil. There's like a really big snapper season. Haddock and cod. I'm a few years removed from purchasing. A lot of that was coming out of like Russia, but I assume in political climate, there's a little bit of a break in that supply chain. A lot of the kind of flounder is coming out of China as well. It really depends on the species of fish, and there's a lot of regional fish items in the States, but these are the major import fish that I can think of, and that's kind of where those fish are coming from.
Hmm. And I guess are the different countries, do they have maybe different standards or regulations around these that you consider when you're purchasing, like quality or?
You betcha. You betcha. So every country is going to operate differently. What we are protected by here in the States is certainly the FDA and our own kind of restrictions and quality. Now, I'll tell you this, as a former purchaser buying products from multiple countries, the way that you drive quality really originates with the spec of the item that you want. So you can determine, like, I want X percentage of moisture loss, or I want this much trim, I want this kind of a cut, I want this and that. So you're really relying on the purchasers of this product to make the right business decisions. And then as a catch-all, we have the FDA that probably is pulling like one out of every 7 inbound containers of product just randomly, just to keep everyone in check. That coupled with the owners of restaurants checking their own product, because, at Cisco, look, I deal with a lot of salesmen saying, hey, this quality wasn't up to standard, and we vet that. And so there's basically like 3 sets of checks. There's the spec sheet of the product you're buying, so that's how you get into the game and get the suppliers aligned with the product that you want. You have the FDA that's checking to make sure that there's no nefarious games being played, and then you have the owners of these restaurants also kind of doing their own QA to make sure that they have the right product and the right quality in their restaurants.
Interesting. So that's pretty much FDA's looking at anything coming into the United States. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily matter from what country it's from. Like they'll still inspect, randomly, like anything from any place.
Totally. And to further elaborate on that, like at Restaurant Depot, for instance, like if we had a new supplier, we would pull their first 7 containers, every single one, and send them to a third party QA lab.
Hmm.
A regular supplier, you're pulling maybe like 1 out of every 7. And then the FDA is doing their own inspections on top of that. And they got to clear drayage and go through port and all that stuff. So there is like a really kind of strict, inspection process.
And what are they looking for? Are they kind of like cutting it up, going into like a laboratory and saying, is this actually a tilapia? Is this actually a salmon? Or like, are there toxins or something in there? Is that
Oh,
what they?
for sure. So yeah, so you're gonna lose a case or two, but it's for a good cause. And yeah, they're gonna slack it out, and they're gonna kind of take a lot of measurements. There's gonna be a lot of weighing. They're gonna weigh it in its frozen state, weigh it in a semi-thawed state, weigh it in a fully thawed state. Check the variance of the weights there. They can measure drip loss. They can check protein levels. They can essentially see and capture any sort of gamesmanship that might be play. One of the things that we look out for the most is like injecting protein into a fish. That's something that comes up a lot.
What
And
does that mean? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
so there's like, it's like a tripolyphosphide, I think is TPP. Again, I'm a few years out of this specific game, but like
Yeah.
TPP, they kind of shoot it into the fish to try to counterbalance the amount of moisture you lose when you thaw the fish out. I don't know exactly scientifically how they test for that, but
It's like
a
a synthetic protein.
it's like a synthetic protein that like kind of boosts up the fish.
Hmm.
Another one that's a fun one that there's a lot of gamesmanship and you got to be very careful with is octopus, which the best octopus is coming out of Spain and Portugal. They call it pulpo. And there's a lot of companies that will like put water into the head of the octopus and freeze it to like artificially jack up the weight. So when
Oh.
you're getting a net weight of 44 pounds, but when you thaw it out, it's only 26,
Hmm.
things like that. So it's really like a lot of water management.
Yeah,
You're
I
really
know.
looking for like the least amount of moisture loss, and moisture loss is really like reflected when you fry the fish in the pan. So like you have this big fillet in the freezer and you thaw it out and it gets a little smaller and you're like, okay, well, I guess there was some ice, whatever. You could get past that. It's when you put it in the pan and then it like goes into that really small, and you go, what the
Right.
heck just happened to the
Right.
fish?
Right.
That's where there's evidence of something like that. So yeah, it's really like a bunch of water games when it
Interesting.
comes to buying like frozen commodity seafood. That's the number one thing to look out for.
Yeah, I think that was. I don't cook super often, but when I cook up some shrimp, it's like you buy like, oh, this is like jumbo shrimp, and you're like, frozen in the bag. Like, oh, they look pretty big. Then you cook them up, and they get so small. It's like,
Oh
wow,
yeah,
I should have put the entire bag in here just for myself.
totally. And shrimp, just to pause on shrimp for a minute, because shrimp is probably the best frozen commodity seafood item to buy, in my opinion.
Hmm.
The other thing about shrimp is that it is all farm raised. There
Oh
is no
yeah.
wild caught shrimp except for like the Gulf of Mexico. And the only way you would really get that fresh is if you were in Louisiana and the boat came up and like
Hmm.
loaded the shrimp up. And those are brown shrimp, which is not what you'd be eating in your shrimp cocktail. So shrimp
Interesting.
is almost exclusively out of India, Vietnam, and Thailand. India being the number one in terms of quality. And it's these massive ponds that are seeded and farmed because they control the size of the shrimp. That's how the shrimp game works. It's all from ponds, it's all farm raised, it's all frozen. And if you're buying fresh shrimp at a grocery store, it's just shrimp that they've previously thawed. So I don't
Interesting.
think they're allowed to say fresh shrimp anymore. I'll challenge your listeners here. Go to the supermarket, like a ShopRite or a King's or something like that, and see the shrimp in like that's on ice but thawed. See if it says fresh or previously frozen. It should say
Hmm.
previously frozen. I'm
Interesting.
pretty confident. But shrimp is the best. There's the highest standards there. Nobody can sneak into that game. There's too many established players. So
Hmm.
it's actually the best commodity to buy because like everyone's been weeded out. So it's just the best quality guys are in the game now. And it's I love shrimp. I always have a bag of frozen shrimp in my freezer. Yes, it definitely gets up so small, and you got to use a little bit more. But I would say from a quality and a safety standard, it's probably the best thing that you can have in your freezer as far as frozen seafood goes.
Nice, some good news there. Now, you mentioned it's all farm raised. I guess I've heard from media and whatnot that a farm raised is something to look out for because stagnant waters and maybe the animals are getting sick. Have you like seen things around that, or like any words of wisdom on farm raised, or if there's some that
Yeah,
are better than others?
yeah, that and this is like the $1 million question, right? Because of what you just said, it's the media and the portrayal of it, and big fish out there just spewing nonsense. No, it really is. You got to do your homework here, which is what's challenging, and I think they're betting on people not looking into it. So not every fish species is going to be farmed or wild caught. Like some of them, there it's not a binary situation. Like tilapia is almost exclusively farmed in ponds in China. Like I mentioned with shrimp, it's almost exclusively farmed in ponds in India and Vietnam and Thailand. And salmon's really the one where it comes into play. So I would say that in the species of salmon, farm raised Chilean salmon is a pretty quality product. It's not in they're not like in an area where they can't breathe or they're super packed or they're not getting the right nutrients. Like it's a very controlled process. They're very impressive. If you ever like Google the salmon farm operation, like you would probably be pretty impressed. But I would argue that the wild caught salmon from the waters of Alaska is a far superior product, and that's reflected in the price.
Hmm.
Like if you're going to a Mother's Day brunch and they have salmon in one of the hot trays, like that's Chilean farm raised salmon. That's very price conscious, but it's a fine fish. Like again, it's relegated by all those standards that I mentioned before. But if you're getting like a king salmon from like I was caught on a reel and rod off like a skiff in Alaska at like 175 feet below the surface, like that thing's gonna be delicious. It's also gonna cost you a pretty penny.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it really kind of you really got to do some research or talk to your talk to your fish guy at the store. I really am going to push that relationship because it's also really cool to have a fish guy, for lack of a better term, because they can educate you on these things and steer you in a way that's like, hey, look, this is a really nice fish. It's farm raised. It's going to be a better price point than this, and I actually find that it's better, or this. So it's really kind of species to species. It really depends, but like shrimp is kind of the one that I like to lead with. That is essentially all farmed. The only wild caught shrimp is really the brown shrimp in the Gulf of Mexico, and again, that's very much like a Southeast United States cuisine that's in a lot of like po' boys, and it's usually fried up. It's a much fishier taste. If you had a brown shrimp and an Indian shrimp, you would know the difference immediately.
Interesting. One fish we haven't touched on, which I kind of thought we were, would be the tuna. Sushi grade tuna, this,
Oh
that, and the
yeah.
other, and talking about mercury levels and again media, but maybe also truth. Have you any evidence or experience with that fish and how
Oh
it
yeah.
goes there?
Yeah. And that's like now we're going to Japan and we're talking about triple A, double A, single A grading of saku tuna. So look, you don't have to worry about tuna when it comes to sushi because the people over there take this fish, I mean, with a tremendous amount of pride. Like our supplier, for example, and I'm talking at Restaurant Depot where I was supplying 44 warehouses from Virginia Beach to Maine. The person we bought our sushi grade tuna from, his father would walk on the docks and like look at the fish like with his hands, and like there's a tremendous amount of care in that product that just doesn't exist. Like you would think you couldn't scale it out in that way, but
Hmm.
you can, and you just don't buy as much of like a tilapia, right? A tilapia we might be buying 150 containers a year, whereas a saku tuna maybe you're buying 20.
Hmm.
So really, there's like a minimum quality standard to even land that fish at the dock. And then at that point, they grade it single A, double A, triple A. I believe triple A is the best. And yeah, I mean, that's another one where you have an established relationship with a supplier. You do a lot of product testing. I mean, what I didn't mention is that a lot of these fish are coming into our kitchen to be tested and eaten and looked at, and there's maybe 50 suppliers that bring in product and they're all trying to be the best, and you're asking them these questions, where is this coming from? How do I know this is good? What separates you from the other distributors? And yeah, when it comes to sushi tuna, it's kind of like that shrimp industry. It's kind of like there is no room for manipulation or
Right.
any sort of errors. Ground tuna, I think, would be where you could start to get into some quality concerns. But again, like there's some sophisticated scientific testing that goes into ground tuna that can really evaluate its quality. And so you got to really rely on those folks who are experts in that field to really kind of test that for you. Um, I've had to eat lots of ground tuna in test kitchens, and it was quite frightening when I first approached it, but I never got sick. All of the tuna was very good, and I think that's why I could stand really confidently behind that fish.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for diving into that. That's probably my
sure.
favorite one to get at the sushi restaurant, so I want to
Oh,
make
and
sure I'm
you
still
can
safe.
continue to get it. It's my favorite as well.
All right, cool. Awesome. So yeah, maybe we can take a little pivot away from the food and seafood and talk about you being a relatively new dad. You said you had your first Christmas with your daughter. How'd that go?
Oh yeah. So I'm a new dad, 18 months. Technically, this is our second Christmas actually.
Okay.
But this one really counted because she's gained awareness. She's really kind of turned into a little person here. You know, it's I'm at a loss for words because it's been a goal of mine to be a dad for the longest time, and to achieve it is just an incredible milestone on a personal level, but like the joy that it brings day in and day out, even in the hardest moments, is like the most gratifying experience that I've ever had. The Christmas piece, I really want to dive into that because Christmas in my house growing up was like magic. My mom, and now I know how the magic's made, so we'll get into that. But like, I'm talking everywhere you go, and I'm sure you've been at my house and seen the decor and remember maybe the absurdity and scale of it all. No stone unturned. I mean, we have a room where only Santas are. There is a Nutcracker collection that is, I mean, I'll have to provide a picture for this edit. It's insane. There's another room, and everywhere you look, there's Christmas, and it loved it. She made it so special, and like, I love Christmas because of that. And to be able to give that to my daughter in the same house where I had it has been really incredible. And so last year was the first Christmas, and it was so like the dopamine, the adrenaline, like everything that I got from it was so intense that I ended up in January, which is my birthday month and usually the carrot that gets me through that month. I was like holiday bluesing like I've never like seen in my life. Like it was like the biggest holiday hangover I've ever had. And I this year I was very aware of that piece and just kind of maintain some better eating and exercise habits kind of going into the holiday season because I think we all kind of dial it back, but I amplified it ahead of it. I got in front of it this year. And so I feel like we really crushed it because we got a white Christmas. As you know, it snowed on Christmas Eve, so I got to build a snowman with my daughter, which, I mean, how, like, it doesn't get much cooler than that. Sledding in the backyard, and yeah, it was just something else. There's just, I don't know. Christmas is for the kids, put it that way. It's just something I learned as well.
Yeah, that's something with the eating around the holidays. I know 2 years ago went crazy on the Christmas cookies. This year I tried to hold back, but it's just so difficult because there's just so many cookies everywhere. But I think that that sugar rush, within the day you can have the peak and the trough and the crash from it. But even just like that whole month, it's like going into January. It's like wow, I
Brutal.
had like the number of pounds of sugar I've probably consumed in the past month, and just trying to process that out through the January season has always been a rough transition. Maybe you can talk to some of your year-round goals or habits around fitness and activity. What are types of things that you like to do to stay active?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a stats nerd. So anything I can track and measure, I'm tracking and measuring. So, and even like in its basic form, like let's just take step count, right? Like step count, I'm going to brag a little bit here. My step count average daily last January was like 7,642. And sorry, I'm weird with numbers. So that's like 100% accurate. And right now I'm trending at 14,470. And my goal for the year is to get 15,000 daily step count. Now, I know it's not the best metric for health, but it is a metric to look at, and it's the trend that matters. So as long as I'm trending up, like I finished last year at like 12,000 average, but again, started really low and had to like hyperdrive it. So for me, I've taken a few things into my own hands. One is I joined a gym last August. It's an expensive, fancy gym, which I'll remain nameless until they give us money. But because of that piece, it really forces me to go. And again, I work from home, so I have a little flexibility in terms of being able to go to the gym. So I can go to the gym at really nice hours. I'm going 5 to 6 times a week.
Oh, nice.
At a minimum, I'm just running on a treadmill. I do a 15 or 30-minute treadmill run followed by push-ups, sit-ups, and then I hit the showers and I get out of there. And that's how I started, because for me, consistency is key. So just going there, having a regimen, doing that over and over and over and over again has yielded really positive results on the weight loss side and also on the fitness side. Because now I'm starting to get a little bored, so I start to get curious, and now I'm starting to add things to the routine. So that's been the anchor of my fitness journey so far, in terms of just like how I keep my body healthy. And then the other side is competitive sports. I played competitive sports my whole life. I crave it. I need it. It's a release for me. It's also tremendously enjoyable, and it's proven to create some friendships that I didn't expect. And so I play a lot of racket sports, and I play in a men's soccer league. And that coupled with that gym membership has really balanced out my fitness to the point where I feel very good. Like I feel like I'm not leaving a lot of meat on the bone here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have something that you enjoy to motivate you to be active. I feel like times when I've struggled to get out and be active and have exercise in my life, in my daily regimen, like I've struggled most when I didn't really have something I liked. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna
Hmm.
go to the gym, but like, do I really like going to the gym?
To do
Maybe
what?
not. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's like just lift weights, pick them up, put them down, which is like fine and all like that. There's I
Sure.
think some competition in that if the goal is trying to increase your weight, trying to
Of
increase your
course.
reps, and kind of tracking it that way. But if it's can be an activity, especially like a social interaction and some competition, that's even better to keep the motivation high.
Yeah.
You mentioned tracking and metrics. Do you have anything like wearables, or are you just kind of doing it on your phone? What's your approach there?
So I'm old school. I like the phone. Like I don't like the watch mostly because I like watches. Like I wear I switch up my watches. I have ones that I'm really fond of. So I like wearing a regular watch. So that's kind of that. The Aura ring intrigues me, but I don't know if I could be a double ring guy.
Yeah,
So I'm just like I'm that I also worry about like over obsessing. Like that feels like it would track so much. So I honestly just keep my phone in my pocket. I have these really cool compression shorts that have like a slider pocket, so like the phone's not like bouncing around.
right.
And I keep it on for everything, like even in soccer games and racket sports. And yeah, I mean, I'm really just tracking the step count and my weight and my water intake. Those are my three metrics right now. And look, I'm looking for trends, and the trends are moving in the right directions. Will I consider adding more metrics? You betcha. But um, I don't like to overwhelm. I like to take small steps when making changes that are small, sustainable, and scalable. And so far, those have been the ones that I can manage really easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I've built a nice data set that I can feel confident as a baseline. So we'll see if I get into anything else. But yeah, right now it's just good old iPhone.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's again, like you're mentioning, getting something that you can be consistent with is kind of the
Totally.
first step. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, feel like it's a chore. You want to make sure you build that habit nice and early and make
Hmm.
it doable and manageable even on your sluggish days when getting out
Yeah,
of bed
yeah,
is maybe more
totally,
difficult.
totally.
Awesome. So yeah, maybe a couple wrapping up comments from your side. I, on my side, am expecting to be a father very soon, and
No
yeah,
way!
did I just yeah
No
just share that news
way!
for the first time right now? Yep. So yeah,
Holy cow! Are
it's
you serious?
my wife Brittany is 12 weeks pregnant right now, so I think this is the week
God bless.
milestone that they say you can start sharing it out to the world.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
here we
Yeah.
are.
You want to get through 12? No way, dude. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Last
so
time we
we're
hung
very
out, there
excited.
was a lot of water drinking. I was like, huh.
Yes, yes, there was not much alcoholic beverages being ordered at the table.
Which
Wonder
I'm cool
why.
with. I like water. But
Yeah,
oh, that's so
so yeah,
incredible.
so yeah, I forgot I hadn't told you yet.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's
Yeah,
sweet.
dude, we're pregnant.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's awesome,
due
man.
in
That's so
July.
good.
So
Oh,
yeah, any
July. That's when my daughter was born. Great month.
oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, due date is the 25th right now.
Oh
So
my gosh, it's a week after whatever. That's awesome. We maybe some shared beach birthdays in the future.
excellent, sounds good. But yeah, any advice to me, people like me, dads, expecting dads on the
Yeah,
prep and the
look,
experience?
I admittedly did very little formal preparation, and it's a little bit of my style. I kind of operate in that way. I just like to get in there and just like read the vibes, and that may come off bad to some, but for me, that's just who I am. I also feel like it's inherently programmed within you. Like you can read whatever you want. You can, and look, I'm not poo pooing it. Like feel comfortable. Do what makes you feel confident. I think that's really what's important. But all of it's already in there. clicks in immediately, and
Mm.
from the moment it happens, like you're in it, and you don't want to be anywhere else. Be present, just take it all in. Like, it's so beautiful. Like, I just remember on our first birthday, everyone was like, how crazy, like how fast time flies. Like, isn't it crazy that Shay's won? I was like, from your perspective, maybe, but I remember every single day of this year, for
Mm.
better or for worse, right? There was really challenging moments. There was just like really beautiful moments, just like things that you could have never conceived of in your mind. And like, from a tip standpoint, like, I would say the first 3 weeks is like a war. You just don't know what you're doing. Neither of you do. And I think my biggest tip would just be like, in those moments where you're feeling defeated or you're exhausted, like, just remind your partner that like it's not them or you. Like, you are worn by the external situation around you. And so like, if you start to battle with each other, put it down and just have a moment to say, look, it's not you, it's not me, it's what's going on around us, and just like marinate in that, and then just like reassess and move on. Because it's really easy to, when you're tired or whatever, lack of sleep, you haven't eaten, you're dehydrated, whatever it may be, it's easy to get snippy and try to like
Mm.
assess blame or
Mm.
whatever. In those moments, just remind yourselves that like you're in this together. Like, you can't control what's happening, but you're committed to making it work. And like, I think that if you can get through that 3 weeks, it really starts to open up. And also, don't try to make like scheduled plans. We talked about numbers and metrics and things like that. Yeah, the second you figure out something, it's gonna change. So just be on your toes, be flexible. But man, just enjoy it. I'm so happy for you, dude. That's so
Thank
cool.
you.
It's the greatest. I mean, it's like there's just nothing like it.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah, no,
it's
I
amazing.
appreciate it. Yeah, it sounds like trust the process, go
For
with the
sure.
flow. Don't
For
try to
sure.
control things too much.
Yeah, let go of control, which, look, you and I, we like to control stuff. I get that. Not in a weird way, just like we like to know what's going on, but
Right.
let go of that for sure. And just like really like be in it. And like, my favorite memories with Shay, like so far, have been like random occurrences of things that are super insignificant, that aren't like Instagrammable or like baby's first, whatever. It's just like you just have these like one off moments that are just like, so just live in it, just enjoy it. It's really like the most special thing.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Those
Yeah.
small moments are what make up life. Yeah.
Ah, for sure. For sure.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for taking the time. Any final words you want to leave with the audience?
Talk to the people at the grocery store. They're, especially those butchers and seafood guys. Look, I am biased towards the seafood. The butchers still scare me. Okay, I admit that. So for your listeners who I'm like, go talk to the seafood guy, I'm sure they feel the same way I feel about like the butcher. I always go, I'll just take a New York strip or like whatever.
Right.
But like, they just like learn, challenge yourself to learn. I think it's cool. And when you get in with your food people, like, you can really have a unique eating experience that differentiates from others. Like, some people will go through, I feel like, their whole lives just like kind of eating the same meals over and over again, but like, just like let someone else like take you on a journey with food. Learn a little bit about what you're eating, and enjoy that. I just think that food is like my favorite thing, and I just like get so psyched when like I have a recipe that I've never made before and it comes out good, and like I can bring it to someone else and then they
Mm.
might start making it. So yeah, just enjoy that side of the food process. I know people eat for fuel, and that's fine if that's how you want to approach it. But I don't know. Food is like my love language, and I think that it really brings people together. And like I said, to bring it back to my family dinners, like that's what kept us really tight as a family. It was like our
Mm.
check-in moment. It was our opportunity to be without phones. Granted, there were no phones there, but in my version, there will also be no phones.
Hmm.
And yeah, just reset and just allow food to kind of be the thing that brings you together. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Great words of wisdom right there. I really appreciate you taking the time, coming on, sharing your
Absolutely.
perspective and insights into the world of food. So
Yeah, no
looking forward
doubt.
to hopefully having you back on the show sometime in the future, and yeah, sharing my experiences as
A
fatherhood
future new dad. Can't
imposes
wait,
on
man.
me. Yeah.
Enjoy. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll come on anytime.
Thanks so much.
All
Take care,
right, see
everyone.
ya. Bye.